Hello there, my name's Tom Chapman. I'm a maths teacher here at Fram, and I'm going to talk to you all about how to revise for GCSE maths. So first of all then, let's look at the papers. So there's 3 papers in GCSE maths, each 90 minutes. Each paper's got 80 marks. Paper 1 is a non-calculator paper, and papers 2 and 3 are both calculator papers. There's 2 tiers of entry as well in maths at GCSE, and there's a higher tier and there's a foundation tier. And decisions are made as to which tier you're going to be sitting, normally towards the end of year 11. So time management in the maths exam. So you've got 90 minutes for 80 marks. And what we normally say is work on about a mark a minute. That gives you 5 minutes at the start to look through your paper and decide which questions you're going to go for first. And then 5 minutes at the end to check through, make sure you've not made any silly mistakes and make sure you've answered all the questions. So it gives you, as I said, some time left over at the end. If you're spending 3 minutes on a 1 mark question, there's going to be an easier way. And similarly, if you're spending 1 minute on a 6 marker, something's gone wrong. All right, you've probably missed something. So check and look back through. Right, a 6 marker question. Have I answered everything that I've asked me to do? So little Mr. Chapman's maths hack as well. You don't have to answer the questions in order. So you don't have to start through question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4 and work your way through sequentially. You could start at question 5 because I think actually that's a really easy topic for me. I'm going to bag some marks early on. I'm going to do question 5 first, then I'm going to go to question 10, then I might go back to question 2. It's all about getting those marks in early and leaving those more difficult questions till last. So, changes since September 2015. It sounds quite a while ago now, September 2015, but there may be some people here who've got brothers and sisters who maybe did the course quite a few years ago and have got exam revision guides that have been passed down. So there have been some changes. So let's compare questions from the old style and the new style exam. So in the old exam, this is a classic question, work out 29 times 52. In the new exam, this is the same question but worded differently. A local football club have just reached the County Cup final. They want to bring 29 coaches to the final. Each coach has 52 seats. How many supporters go into the final? Now both questions are asking to do 29 times 52, but you can see in the new exam there's a lot more wordy. All right, the skills haven't changed, but you have to decide when it's appropriate to use them. Okay, so it's a little bit more tricky to know which skill you can use on what question. So, need to know formulate. Now, this is up in the maths rooms, and I encourage students to take photos of this poster. If you're a foundation tier student, you need to know a portion of these. If you're a higher tier student, you're going to need to know all of these. Now, these again used to be in the front of the paper. Now they're not. You will need to remember them. However, we don't know whether, because of the pandemic and the sort of the exceptional circumstances, whether they will be in the paper. So these might be in the paper for the students to use. We don't know yet. As soon as we know, we will let students know, but you may be required to remember them. They may be in the paper. We don't know yet for this summer, so we'll see what happens. So these are what we call the command words, or the language of your maths exam. It's important to know what each of these command words mean. So I always use the top left hand one as an example. So where it says estimate, don't work out exactly, round the numbers and then tell me the answer. So if a question says estimate 4.7 times 6.2 and you work out that exactly, you're not going to get as many marks as if you rounded the numbers off as they're done there. 5 times 6 is 30. So each of the numbers have been rounded off and we've sort of approximated the answer. So it's important that we know what the questions are asking us to do. If not, we're not going to get full marks. Okay, so now about equipment. A good mathematician has their equipment and they know how to use their equipment. So first thing is a ruler. You need to have a ruler graduated in centimetres and millimetres, normally a clear plastic ruler we have. No wooden rulers marked in inches. They're going to be absolutely no good for the maths exam. Next up, you need to have protractors. So you can have either the half moon style or you can have the 360. Where am I pointing that way? The 360 protractor as well. That's absolutely fine. Make sure that the markings on there are visible. Sometimes what happens is you have your protractor in your pencil case for 5 years, and then by the time you get to the end of year 11, all of the markings are rubbed off and you can't actually read any of the angles. So just make sure that the lines are clear enough for you to be able to read and measure the angles properly. Next thing is a pair of compasses, and I mean this. So a few things with compasses. Make sure, first of all, that it's got the little spindly thing on there to hold your pencil in. Make sure also that it's tight at the top so that when you draw a circle, it's not going to go into a spiral and you're going to get an accurate measurement. And also make sure it's got a spike on the end of it as well. We've had some people try to use a compass without a spike on it, and that's not ended well. So please make sure you've got a pair of compasses. And by a pair of compasses, I don't mean these. Next up. So pens, make sure you've got a pen for the maths exam. So normally black biro is what we ask, please. No quills or fountain pens or any jazzy sort of pens. Just a plain black biro is what we ask for. Have a spare and a spare. Why we say plain black biro is that your papers are scanned in after your exam and sent off to the exam board. So they scan all those in. And if you've written in some sort of funny coloured ink, it may not pick up what you've written. So plain black pen or pencil, obviously, if you're making diagrams. Next up, obviously pencils and eraser. You need those as well. You will normally use a pen for normal writing. You use a pencil for drawing. Obviously that includes graphs as well. So if you make a mistake, it's easy to rub that out. We've had people use pens for graphs in the past, and then they make a mistake and it's just a total mess because they have to scribble things out and right, mark this bit, not this bit, and it gets really confusing. So pencil for drawing in graphs, pen for normal writing. Tracing paper. So you are allowed tracing paper in the maths exam. Sometimes it's already on the desk for you to use. If not, you can put your hand up and ask for some tracing paper. Really, really good for the transformations questions like rotations and reflections. So if you haven't got some, ask for some if you do need it. Don't use it for working out is another point as well because it won't get marked. So please do not do any working out on your tracing paper. Right, if you're going to highlight or underline keywords, that's absolutely fine. You can take a highlighter into the maths exam and highlight any keywords. As I said, the questions are a lot more wordy now than they used to be. So please feel free to take highlighters into the maths exam. Make sure you're not highlighting the whole question because that's a total waste of your time. And then books of text and things highlighted as well. So use it to pick out those keywords you think might be helpful. So identifying keywords, obviously wordy questions can be daunting. So underline any key information you think might be important to help you with the question. Some people like to cross things out as well, so cross out any red herrings, so any information that you're not going to need. Some people like to cross that out, so if that helps you, please do so, but don't scribble things out and then realise you're going to need it and you've rubbed it out. So just be careful. Tick each piece of information off. So if there's a question that requires you to do several steps, maybe it's like, I don't know, 3-part of the question, tick things off as you do it so you don't forget anything is a good idea as well. Okay, and this is another important thing. Don't cross out any work unless you've got something to replace it with. So crossed out work can't be marked. So if you've got something to replace it with, fine. But if you're having a guess at a question and you're going to cross it all out and not replace it with something, don't do that because you might still get some marks. So show what you're working out. Really, really important. I can't say this enough, hence why it's all over the screen here. There's some questions in the paper that say you must show your working. And if you give a fully correct answer to that question but don't show any working out, you might get 1 mark out of 5. Okay, fair enough. And quite a lot of the paper, if you just give a correct answer, you'll get full marks. But there are quite a lot of questions now that say you must show your working, okay, or explain this. If you don't do that, you're not going to get your marks. So I would advise you show working out on each question, because if you get the answer wrong, they can look back at the working, and if there's some correct working in there, you might get some marks. So I would show working out on every single question as you go through. Next thing I've already mentioned, but I'll just mention again about crossing work out. Don't cross out any workings unless you've got something to replace it with. If you do have to cross it out, 1 neat line through your working is enough. No scribbling all over the page because it just looks really, really messy and doesn't look professional. And please don't doodle as well. During the exam, so you put your working out in the space provided. So for example on this one here, the question above here, you've got a question at the top and it takes up half the page. You've got to do your working out. If you do any working below that, it won't necessarily be seen by the examiner because, as I said before, they're scanned in and the examiner just sees the question that they're working on. They may miss any working out you've done below the question area. So if you do have to use any extra space, just put an arrow saying there's more working below here so the examiner doesn't miss out any working that you've done. So during the exam, all right, take pride in your work. So for example, with graphs, you've spent time coming up with the points, you've plotted those points. This is a curved graph there, which you join up with freehand. Make sure you're doing that accurately, all right? This is a chance to sort of show what you know. The examiner doesn't know you as a person. All they can see is what they've got in front of them. So they don't know, oh, so-and-so is brilliant with graphs in class, and they're normally fantastic. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't work like that. All they've got to work from is what they've got in front of them. So take that time and show what you know. Okay, check your answers as well. Okay, make sure that you haven't done anything silly. So Don't panic, all right? You can do this. Keep an eye on the time. I've already mentioned about you aiming for about a mark a minute is what we're looking for. Check your answers, show you're working out, and don't forget to check the back page. It goes without saying. There's always one person who says, "Oh, I didn't realise there was a question on the back page." Okay, when everyone's walking out of the exam, so please make sure you check the back page. So, some questions as well require you to write a sentence at the end or give a summary. Make sure you've done that. So in a best buy question, they're asking you, oh, is this true? Is this not? Which one's the best value? If you just say this one's the best value with no evidence, you're not going to get many marks at all. So make sure you give enough evidence at the end there and back up the answer that you've given if they've asked you to do so. Again, make sure the answer is on the answer line. Sometimes it can be confusing for an examiner to know which is the answer because there's lots of different bits all over the place and there's nothing on the answer line. So do make sure, all right, that you put your answer on the answer line or you've made it really, really clear what you want marked. Right, so this one goes without saying. I think this is quite important. Thinking about, is my answer realistic? So nobody's going to be walking 400 miles a day. Nobody's 10 meters tall. Gas and electric bills don't normally run into thousands of pounds. And people don't normally drive at 90 miles an hour unless they're Ed Sheeran. So think, does my answer make sense? We're under pressure in the exam, and sometimes we can give these silly answers, and generally the answers in the maths exam are pretty realistic. So bear these things in mind. If your answer looks a bit wrong, check. All right, does this sound realistic? Right, 2 of the papers out of the 3 are calculator papers, so check in advance that your calculator works. All right, there's no point rocking up to the maths exam with a calculator with a flat battery and no solar panel on it. It doesn't work. So check that your calculator works. Check that it's suitable and can be used for the exam. No calculators that are going to start printing out a receipt every time you type something in. That's absolutely no good to anybody. Check it's in degrees mode. So on your calculator at the top when you turn it on, there's normally either a D, a G, or an R. So D stands for degrees. It should be in degrees mode. If it's not, make sure it is in degrees mode. If you don't know how to check it or how to change it, speak to your maths teacher and we can check for you. But it must be in degrees mode. If not, your answers to angles questions, especially with trigonometry, are going to be wrong. Make sure you know how to use it as well. So you might borrow a calculator off someone for the exam. That's not always good because you might borrow a calculator that's different to the one you normally use, and then you're trying to figure out where all the buttons are because it's a different brand of calculator and all the buttons are mixed up. So I would make sure you've got your own calculator, you know how to use it, and you're familiar with where all the buttons are. These are the 2 most popular calculators. So you've got the Casio FX85 GT Plus, personal favourite of mine. So we have these in school. There's the newer model as well, which is the Casio FX85 GTX. That's the one you can now buy online. The one on the left, I think you can't really buy anymore unless you get it from eBay. The one on the right is the sort of the newer model. We do sell these in the finance office. I believe they're $9.99, and I'd recommend getting one of these 2 Casio ones here. There are other brands obviously available, but Casio seems to be the most popular type, but make sure it's one of these 2 models here. There are other models out there as well, more sort of flashy ones. There's graphical calculators that plot graphs and things. We're not really interested in those. So one of these 2 models here, the FX85 GT Plus or the FX85 GTX, make sure you've got one of those 2 and check the model number. So a classic example here of a model number. So when I was at school, my mum got me the Casio CTK 4000, and we had a bit of a surprise when it arrived because it was actually an electronic keyboard. So funny enough, it was absolutely no good in the maths exam, and yeah, we should check the model number in advance. So there we go. Classic case there. Make sure you check the model number before you order and make sure it's going to be a calculator that's suitable for the maths exam. I'm joking, of course. Right, some tools you could use, some strategies and tools you could use then. So if you're stuck, draw a bar model. Some people like representing their answer as the bar model, so try and represent your question in a different way. Write down some useful formulae. So some people like doing this at the start of the paper. If you've got all these formulae in your head, oh, I've got Pythagoras' theorem, I've got the quadratic formula in my head, I've got the soccer turf for trigonometry, I want to try and get all these out of my head. Some people like to open the paper and write down all the formulas they think they might need. Okay, so they're out of their head and they can focus on the question. But maybe write down some formula you might think might be useful in that question. Highlight key information. I've already said use a highlighter. Organise information in a table, especially on 2-way table questions, because there's going to be a lot of numbers and things confusing. Maybe organise information in a table to make things a bit easier to understand. Estimate first, then check. As I said before, is my answer realistic? Does it sound about right? If not, okay, you might have to rethink how you worked it out. If it's tricky, draw a picky. Maybe represent your answer pictorially, right? Maybe draw a picture that might help you visualize what's going on. Make an equation if you're trying to find out a missing value, and maybe work backwards. Okay, maybe a bit stuck on how am I going to get there, or maybe start with what you think the answer might be and work backwards. Okay, how am I going to get back to the question? After the exam, we give every student one of these. We call these a QLA, which stands for a question level analysis, and they're individualized to every student. We put the answers, or the answers the students are given their marks for each question on the mock into a spreadsheet, and it produces one of these question level analysis. It's based on each paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3, and it gives the students feedback on how they did on each question. So if I zoom in here on a paper 1, for a particular student, any question that's highlighted in green means they scored full marks on that question. Any question highlighted in orange means they got part of the marks. Any question in red means they didn't score any marks on that particular question. So every topic is given there for each question, so the student can then go and look up that particular topic in a revision guide or online and do some revision on that particular topic. So it's really clear what topics the students need to work on and which ones they're good at, okay, which ones they've got strengths in as well. So I think that's really important. Useful resources available to you. So I recommend, obviously, the standard My Maths Pad are really good. Bite size. I'd highly recommend using past papers, going onto the Edexcel, so they call Pearson now, their website, and downloading some past papers for maths and seeing how the questions are laid out, how they're formatted. You can see the mark schemes as well, where the marks are coming from. I'd highly recommend doing that. The best way to revise for GCSE maths is practice. Practice the questions. Okay, see what sort of thing they're after. Seneca, some students like as well. MathsBot is fantastic for picking off sort of random categorized questions. Corbett Maths is brilliant. We do sell the Corbett Maths revision cards. They're brilliant. And on Corbett Maths, they've got the videos, and they've also got worksheets you can go on as well. And actually on Corbett Maths, they've got the 5 a day. We were all told we should have our 5 fruit and veg a day. Well, what's better than doing 5 maths questions a day? You can go on there and there's 5 maths questions for every day, higher in foundation, plus answers as well. I think that's really good. Maths Genie is good, again, for categorized exam questions, and there's nothing better than a revision guide as well. Okay, so I'd recommend either the CGP ones, we have those in stock here at school, and also the Pearson revision guides are pretty good as well. So I'd recommend either of those. We are starting up in school year 11 revision sessions for this, starting up on Monday the 4th of October after school. We generally, later on in the year, we base them on how you did in the mocks. Obviously, the mocks are taking place in November, so after November, when we have the next set of revision sessions, we'll base them on how well you did in the mocks overall. Sessions are normally aimed at particular topics, and we announce them weekly. Right, today's session is going to be on so-and-so quadratic equations. Come along. It's an ideal opportunity to ask some questions, so you can feel free to bring stuff along as well. There's normally multiple staff there, so you can ask staff some questions. And what we do is we alternate Mondays for higher and foundation. So Monday the 4th of October is going to be a higher session, and then the following week is going to be foundation, and we move between the two. 1 week higher, 1 week foundation. They're in A105 every Monday after school, 3:05 until 4 o'clock, and I'd highly recommend attending those. So while I'm here, I'd just like to talk about further maths. So this is different from intervention or extra maths. It's actually a different qualification to GCSE maths. It's got 2 exams. It's an extra, it's an add-on as well as GCSE maths, if you like. It's a crossover course between GCSE and A-level, and is really aimed at those students who are going to be taking A-level maths next year at college. So sessions are taking place with Mrs. Bain on after school on a Monday in A106, and we're classing it as a period 6 this session. So it's essential that if you're taking further maths, you attend. Obviously, you would have been doing this last year as well in year 10, so you know if you're taking the further maths, but it's essential you attend those sessions on a Monday after school. So I just want to finish up by saying don't panic, do your best, okay, and that's all we ask you to do here at Fram. If you're stuck, ask your maths teacher, and don't leave things to the last minute. The key to being successful in maths is practice, okay? And working on those areas that you're not as strong at. So don't shy away from those areas. Make sure you ask your teacher in class if you're stuck. Come along to the revision sessions. Do your own work at home as well. So if you think, actually, do you know what? I'm not very good at algebraic fractions. I'm going to do some work on that at home in my own time. That's a fantastic thing to do. Feel free to email me as well, t.chapman@fehs.set.education, or alternatively, you can email Mrs. Claire, who's our Director of Maths, at h.claire@fehs.set.education. All it remains for me to say is best of luck. I hope all goes well, and best luck in the maths exam.